Hello, family members. I hope you're having a nice day today. I want to talk about something that I've been seeing a lot of like memes and different sort of hot takes around this. Specifically, one where the right wing conservative parent is telling the child that everything is socialist that they like. You know, like everyone should have a place to live, everyone should have food to eat, all that stuff. And they're like, that's socialism. And it's like, why do young people like socialism? Well, you keep telling them the things that they like are socialism. And I think that's kind of like funny, but it's not true because the reason that the kids like socialism is that they like socialism. Like, I am just absolutely perplexed about why it is people are so afraid of that Hasan Piker guy. Like, if you don't know who he is, that's a little bit of a surprise because he is getting a little bit more of a high profile than he used to have. But old boy is a former member of the Young Turks or worked with the Young. I don't know exactly. I don't really know what the Young Turks do or are. I just nah. But he's a Twitch streamer, which is what a lot of the young people watch these days. They don't watch TV. They don't watch YouTube. They watch Twitch streaming. And Twitch streaming can be any sort of thing. It can be people playing video games. It can be people talking about current events. It could be people just like literally watching other content and reacting to it in real time. Like, it's a very broad range of types of content. And this guy, he's a young man, so he's gonna be a little bit more appealing to that young crowd. And so it's kind of not surprising that he's pretty popular on Twitch, and popular enough that people like cut down the clips of the best moments of his show and upload them on YouTube, which is mostly how I am familiar with him is through that lens. Although I have seen him like on the Majority Report or other, podcasty, YouTubey, current events type content. By the way, I know in mentioning things like Hasan or the Majority Report, I mean, people are like, oh my gosh, they're so biased. And I'm like, yes, every single source of any sort of opinion or analysis or anything is going to have bias. I am well aware that the Majority Report people have their biases. Hasan Piker has his biases. He said some stuff that I was like, oh boy, that is unfortunately ableist or unfortunate. Well, here's an example. He wanted to say somebody was annoying or bad or foolish or whatever. And the word he wanted to use would have been the R word. But he's nice enough not to use the R word. But what he said instead was mentally impaired. Okay, the reason the R word is a slur is because people used a word that was a clinical term for people who had mental impairments of whatever sort. And the jerks of the world started using it as an insult for each other. But every time that they insulted each other by using this terminology, they were also insulting everybody who is mentally impaired by proxy. And if you are comparing people who are acting in foolish, illogical, irrational ways. If you're conflating that with being mentally impaired, you know, cognitively delayed or whatever, then you are just stealing another terminology and making it into a slur. You're still doing the insult by proxy. Do you not understand? I don't understand why people don't get that. You don't insult people by insulting their intellect. That is so ableist and wrong, and you, the people that you're insulting don't deserve it because they have enough hostility in this culture. Okay, wow, I am way off track. I am sorry about that. My dad taught profoundly mentally impaired kids, so you know, this is something I have a little bit of a strong opinion on. Anyway, so he's, you know, not a perfect guy. You can't say that any of these different political influencers on any side don't have biases, right? Like, you can watch something and know that it's biased, and when you take in information from it, you can process it and go, do I really take this at face value? I know this source has this type of bias. It's just data points. You should never take anything anyone says at face value. You should always be aware of what their potential biases are, okay? I'm including myself in this. All human beings have unconscious biases that we don't even know that we have, and we act on them without realizing it. And so even if we have the best of intentions, we can still pass those biases on to you. So please, don't be afraid to watch content creators who have bias, obvious bias. Just remember who the source is and cross-reference, like everything, always. Get your information from more than one source. Get your information from many, many sources, and not always the same sources, because you will be so surprised. Like, when my father is here, he likes to watch the nightly news every night, and the point of view that is espoused on that nightly broadcast, if that were all you were consuming, you would be very ill-informed. Even if the news broadcast has the best intentions, it's still, number one, owned by a giant corporation, right? It's still subject to ratings, so they can't, you know, their ability to speak truth to power is a little bit limited, okay? It's not, you know, that they don't want to. It's just a little difficult to do so when Big Daddy Corporation is the one who is footing the bills, you know? Anyway. Wow, I keep getting way off track. The thing is that it's so hard to even discuss people like this Hasan guy, because you do have to go into like all these like diversions, because people have all these like knee-jerk misconceptions about these figures. It's honestly the same way that people on the left react to figures like, say, Tim Pool or Ben Shapiro or whatever. It's just like they have this image of, and I will include myself in this, I have an image of, say, Tim Pool or Ben Shapiro or whatever in my head. And so anytime anyone wants to discuss them, it's kind of going to be a non-starter. I'm just going to be like, yeah, anything to do with that guy, I'm pretty disinterested in. He's like a mean loser. And I mean both of those guys. Both of those guys are just mean losers. And, like, why do I care what they say? But there are times, even on the most recent Some More News episode, Cody played a quote of Ben Shapiro making a cogent point about, it wasn't the latest one, it was a way old one, rerun. I am a little off, sorry about that, but it was about how Congress shouldn't be able to trade in the stock market, which is, pretty important topic. And Ben Shapiro's like, well, it's not fair that they get to have this, non-public information and compete in the same stock market as everyone else. Now, of course, his point was that everybody should have the insider information. Not that we should, I don't know. There's so much wrong with the stock market anyway. I'm not even going to, we can't. But these are the diversions. And I think the reason why these figures are so scary to centrists and right-wing people are because they have people who really agree with them. And it's far more people than the people that watch them. And that's what terrifies these minoritarian far-right people, is that, the majority would actually get what they want. And because when you look at national polling, it's consistently closer to, like, progressive views or even leftist views. Uh-oh, child movie. Sorry about that, family members. My goddaughter's little neighbor girlfriends stopped by, and they just opened the door and come right in because, it's Auntie Elaine's house. They're allowed to do that. But unfortunately, my goddaughter's sick, and she was sleeping, and I told them she couldn't play, and then she woke up, and I had to take care of her for a bit. And it's been Anyway, so back to the original question after all this diversion. Why does that meme bother me about, young people being socialist as like a reaction to, mischaracterizations, maybe even, by their conservative elders? Oop, hang on. Sorry about that. I don't know where my tripod is, and I'm doing the best I can. Anyway, I think the problem is, the reason why people like Hasan or Sam Sear or Emma Vigeland, why those people scare the mainstream, like, Democrat types. Why Zoran scares the mainstream Democrat types is because they know that a lot of what they say resonates with people. That the policies that Zoran would like to implement are broadly popular, not just with, like, the extreme left, with centrists and even some right-leaning people. They know that these are people who have no impetus to bow to the party line. They can truly speak truth to power in a way that broadcast journalists can never. it's look at the difference between Mehdi Hasan's show on MSNBC and what he does with Sateo. If you contrast those two things, if you take the same exact guy with the same exact beliefs, the same exact motivations, the same exact biases, and you put him under corporate, influence versus under his own influence, because the media group that he funded is now his employer. The way that he supports himself is by speaking to his audience. And the way that he speaks to his audience is his speaking truth to power. It's instead of having the powerful be the ones funding your bills, so you have to mind your P's and Q's, he is now actually only beholden to the public. And I would imagine that has made his reporting and his analysis and his commentary and all of it far more genuine, far more sincere. I mean, working on like YouTube and podcasting and things like that, there are certain things that you have to deal with, because you do have to deal with corporations as distribution networks for the most part. But still, with the freedom that a person has as an independent media creator versus somebody who actually works for big networks is vast. And that gulf is the terrifying thing to the centrist. Because the centrist would like for everyone to think that the party line is correct, right? And not to question it, and to follow the same logic that they do. The truth is, you can give two people the same exact set of facts, all of the circumstances the same, and ask them to come to a conclusion based on this set of facts. And their conclusions can differ wildly. They could even be literally like the opposite of each other, okay? And it's not that either one of them are being disingenuous. It's just that human beings as a species have evolved to have all these varied viewpoints, which is one of the things that helps us progress technologically as a species. Why we're so advanced technologically is because there's so many different people with so many different ideas pushing the boundaries in all different ways. And not every idea is good, but if you have enough ideas, you're going to run into, or if you have enough ideas, you're going to run into a good one eventually, right? Well, if you've got billions of people on the planet, there's going to be some good ideas in there. It's just separating the wheat from the chaff is a little bit difficult when you have people who are deliberately trying to muddy the waters for whatever reason. I think that the problem with like the conspiracy theory type people is that they are looking at things at such a shallow level. They don't really dig deeper. And if you dig deeper, the thing about the truth is it's going to be supported by multiple data points. Same thing like I was saying earlier about like cross-referencing everything. If something is true, then every attempt to prove it should support that. I mean, as long as it's a conclusive, reliable thing, like if you do an experiment and make a hypothesis, and then someone else makes another experiment that supports that same hypothesis, and their separate experiment also comes to the same conclusion, that gives more credence to your concept. And so if you keep going and do more and more experiments, eventually you'll get to a point where you can be fairly certain about something, right? And that's why getting information from multiple data points is good, because if something is true, you will be able to see echoes of it in a lot of different ways. I like watching a broad range of content so that I can find these kind of weird little cross references where I'm like, oh, I know this thing about Namibia and then this other thing about Namibia. And now I kind of understand the first thing a little bit better because I have that context. And I was interested because of, it's like things kind of reinforce each other. And if you can connect things, you can kind of start seeing the broader picture. And that's what I'm always looking for. Like, I am so bored all the time because I'm disabled and I can't work. And all I can do is sit around, and I barely have the energy to even, like, get up and, like, walk from one room to another room. And I can't focus. I can't read. So I watch way too much YouTube and sit around and think about shit. And not everybody has the time to do that, and I understand that. And that's where people like Hasan and Sam Cedar and all that come in. They do a lot of that groundwork for people and allow other people to sort of dig deep into these important subjects by proxy. They are people that other people trust to correlate the little pieces and collate the important things that people need to be looking out for, listening to, or hearing, or thinking, or doing. That is the importance of these left-wing influencers that are very, unpopular in certain sects and very popular in others. And the fear is, the more people that actually listen, the more people will be on the side of, hey, these guys are pretty, all right, I understand. Like, that's the thing. I think that in this world where there's just so much content, just gobs of content, like, everywhere, you kind of need sources that you can trust to kind of collate some of the, like, noise that's just being thrown at you all the time. And I think that's one of the things that we'll see people kind of become more influential for, is being content curators, in a sense. And I think that that's something that you do see in the Twitch streamer or the podcaster format, is you see, because it's a longer format, because it's something that's done like daily, or mostly daily, it's going to have a lot of time, and you fill that time by these reflections on other types of content. And they expose people to voices that are very underserved but important voices. Often people who are in minority groups. Often a lot of people that just wouldn't get the time of day on mainstream legacy media, but they might have something really interesting to say. Not even necessarily correct, but just interesting. Which is not to say I don't believe in platform responsibility. I do think that there is something there. I don't know exactly what the equation is. Not something I really have to worry about on my teeny tiny micro YouTube channel with like 167 subscribers. I love all of you so much, though. I don't want to say that. But I just, that's the end. Because at the end of the day, this is the main core truth that is terrifying to the Joe Scarboroughs and the oh, Jake Tappers and the Hakeem Jefferieses of the world. The root cause of basically every social problem in this country boils down to a very small group of people hoarding resources far beyond what they could ever use at the expense of other people. Poverty, lack of resources, lack of housing, underfunding schools, underfunding hospitals, underfunding public transportation. If you dig deep enough into any issue, it all comes back to poverty. You cannot solve the housing crisis without addressing poverty. You cannot solve the awful school system we have without addressing how impoverished areas are disadvantaged academically. You just can't. Everything that you look at in terms of just absolutely unchristian, horrible behavior comes back to poverty. We can't solve domestic violence without solving poverty. We can't solve child abuse without solving poverty. We can't solve human trafficking without solving poverty. Their addiction, gambling addiction, substance abuse addiction, like all sorts of things. Mental health issues, physical health issues, all comes back to poverty. You cannot solve these problems without solving poverty. And that is the fundamental problem that centrists have and right-leaning people have, is that their system is dependent upon there being poverty. And they do not want young people, or anyone really, to come to that realization. They don't want anyone to be able to go, oh, shit, that's true. And be disgusted by the fact that the political ideology that they espoused growing up actually is cruel and condemns a certain segment of the population to a second-class citizen status. In some sense, a distorted feudal system. And once you have that horrific realization, it's kind of hard to go back, And that's why the Democratic Party screwed the pooch. Because they were not responsive to their base. Because they didn't want to go where their base was. And if we have politicians like Zoran that will go to where the people are, we may very well see that they are very happy to vote for them. And I think it's interesting that ranked choice voting was part of the equation there. And I think that's something that everyone who would like to see a more just world, a more democratic America, should pressure their local officials for ranked choice voting at all levels. That is one of the easiest things that we could do that would make our elections less horrifically bad, which they are right now. I mean, when you have a third of the country just not engaging, basically, that's really a failing democracy, and that should be terrifying. That's what, Jeffrey should be afraid of, or Schumer should be afraid of, not Hasan, Like, yeah, I don't agree with that guy in all ways, but he is willing to say what he believes is true and back it up, and seems pretty well read from what I can tell, and seems to me like it's worth listening to him at least some of the time. I don't like streaming. I hate streaming. I cannot watch that guy. I do occasionally watch clips of him, like I said earlier, or watch him on other shows. But streaming, for whatever reason, it's just so meandering that it just breaks my brain. Like, my brain meanders on its own. I don't need someone else's meanderings, I guess. But just because he's not for me does not mean that he's never going to say anything I don't need to hear. You know what I mean? I guess that also kind of wraps right around back to the bias thing, right? We need to listen to all these voices. We need to understand that they are biased, and we need to accept that's okay. Family members, I better let you go. Hope you have a nice day, and I hope I can find my tripod before I make the next video, because this is a little weird. Sorry. Bye.